So this is my Bulma Death and Taxes. It's based off of the concept of causing your opponent to pay taxes, as it were, right? To pay, and in this deck's case, pay by taking damage. So they take damage whenever they play something. The other thing about the deck is it has some board wipes. So let's go through the list real quick. 1 copy of the leader, 4 tests in opposition, 4 Broly counter reversal, 4 Vegeta exploding weakness, 4 Topo Righteous Aid, 4 Kaioken Goku, 4 Goku off to defeat King Piccolo, 4 Lord Slug Giant Force, 4 Frieza Fairweather Friend, 4 Goku Jr. Vegeta Jr. Saiyan Scions, 4 Khalifa Skillus, 4 Heroic Duo Videl, 4 Violent Rays, 4 Goku an Eye for an Eye, and that's supposed to be a Pan Time Patrol Maiden, so you can use the Kai SDR, but this Apex deck site is missing a lot of cards. Clearly is missing a lot of the brainwash cards. They don't even have the brainwash Supreme Kai at time, so the thing is they don't have Pan, but Pan will be in the deck because, you know, she's a free 40k body, plus she has the counter attack. She's, you know, a generic baby Hatchak, so why not? But the Supreme Kaitai is not bad. For 1 energy, you have a similar effect, plus the ability to board wipe, so it does fit the whole death part of the Death and Taxes idea, but you get the idea. So let's see, have it miss. Alright, so you can see the effects of the cards. So that's the Goku off to defeat the King Piccolo. As you can see, you know, he has board wiping abilities. Kaioken Goku has board wiping capabilities. But Vegeta Exploding Weakness has board wiping capabilities, and it can do it on your opponent's turn, so that's pretty nice to be able to board wipe on your opponent's turn. So the basic idea here, the basic line of play is you want to drop Lord Slug turn 2. Well, first off, you want to go a little aggro, right? You want to start off with Goku Jr., Vegeta Jr., Saiyan Scions, right? And go off swinging with it, then do the -1 ability to bring out 2 Khalifas, swing with those, so that should be at least 3 damage right there by itself. And if you can get a leader swing and damage with the leader, like a 5k combo power, then that's potential 4 damage. So right off the bat, turn 1 you could potentially do 4 damage to your opponent, which is a good start. Then you definitely want to get them down to 2 life or 3, but ideally 2. And then what you want to do, like I said, that's turn 1. So turn 2, it's Lord Slug. You want to do his +1 ability because you want him to have markers on him, and the goal is to try to get him to 4 markers, because his auto -4, if your leader card is red, which it is, when your opponent activates a counter skill, deal 1 damage to them. That's the taxes part of the deck. So once they play a counter attack, which is most common, counter card, counter plays the second most common, and counter is the least most common, but it is a possibility. So counter attack, counter play, and counter. So anytime your opponent plays, tries to play a negate when you're attacking, right, a counter attack, you can, deal them 1 damage. That's per each copy of cards you have in play that have that ability. So this is just one thing that has it, and of course you can only use this auto once by -4. But the good thing is that it is an auto, so it can happen on either player's turn. It can happen on your turn, your opponent's turn, especially like I said, if your opponent attacks, right, and you negate an attack, and they're like, oh, swift to retaliation cooler, counter, they'll take a damage, right? So the auto will trigger, they'll take a damage for trying to stop your negate, which could probably win you the game right there and then, especially if time gets called, and you have more life than your opponent, or just in general, your opponent just ran out of life. So there's that. So like I said, taxes, right? You want them to take damage for playing stuff. So that's your turn 2 play. So your turn 3 play will be Goku Eye for an Eye. He's a 3-drop. He has the auto. Once per turn, when your opponent activates a counter skill, deal 1 damage to them. Notice it's an auto, not like an active main or something. Obviously, it's an auto, so it could happen in either player's turn. Your opponent plays a counter. They play a guy stealing trunks. They play, especially if they play their blocker negates, testing opposition, for example, right? Where it has the permanent. If you have 5 or less life, you can activate this card's counter skill from your hand by adding 1 card from your life to your hand. So this will cause cost 2 life for your opponent to use this because of your cards. So as soon as you get this bad boy, you're definitely ready to start burning your opponent. Then on turn 4, ideally, right, unless your opponent's really going off and you got to do a board wipe instead, then turn 4 you'll drop this, the Broly counter reversal, right? Notice this, he has counter in his name, right? Auto, once per turn, when your opponent activates the counter skill, deal 1 damage to them. Notice the pattern, right? That's the whole idea. So you're gonna have at least by turn 4, right? You're gonna have at least 3 cards that can deal your opponent 1 damage per card. And by the time, especially if your opponent's not attacking your unison, by the time you get to turn 4, your unison should have, well, actually by turn 3, your unison should have 4 markers. But so that means by turn 4, your unison should have 5 markers. 5 markers, if you're doing a +1 every turn. And the unison does have crits, so you could take advantage of that, dealing your opponent damage. And they don't plus that way, so you can take advantage of that. But the main thing is that we're trying to set up the unison, the 3-drop Goku, and the 4-drop Broly, right, as a strategy, so that way any time our opponent tries to play a negate, so that means we can start swinging, right? We can swing with our unison. Our opponent already knows that they'll take damage if they play their negates, so they're more likely not going to play their negates, which forces them to have to try to block attacks, right, with blockers, and try to out combo your attacks. So you're forcing them into into a bad situation. So anytime they play a negate, they'll take damage. And the fact that they'll take 3 damage just for playing 1 negate, and if it's a sparking negate or if it's a barrier blocker, they automatically kill themselves. So that's the goal. So the goal is deal them 4 damage, set these 3 cards up, and anytime your opponent makes the bad decision of playing a counter attack, for example, they'll end up killing themselves. So they have to rely on comboing and blockers as their defense. So this is just a way to counter their negates, right? Counterattacks mainly, and some counterplays. Because there are some free counterplays, right? There's the guy stealing trunks, charismatic villain Frieza, and there's the barrage, and you get the idea. There's cards out there that can be played for free that are battle cards, plus any counterattack battle card like a Topo, Oceanus, things of that nature. They have counterattack, and there are some decks that like to use a lot of counterattack battle cards, so you can take advantage of that whenever they try to use them. So that right there will reduce it. And of course, stuff like Violent Rays, right? It's a counterattack, and it is a floodgate negate, so it makes it hard for you to attack. But the fact that you're already going to deal them damage just for playing the negates in the first place gives you an advantage. So that's the idea of the Death and Taxes. And like I said, we got a couple board wipe cards in here. We have something that does the Frieza. He does have the auto once per turn when your opponent activates a counter skill, but he doesn't burn, which a little unfortunate. I was like, oh, I would like it to burn because that way it goes with the theme of the deck. But it does have the ability that you choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards, ignoring barrier, and he gets minus 30k power for the turn. So it's not bad, because at least it helps with the death part of the death and tax deck. So it has some synergy. I haven't tested out this deck. Obviously, it's just a concept, but it's pretty basic and sound. I've already done the whole Saiyan Scion thing many times, so I already know it's not too hard to turn 1 do 4+ damage to your opponent, because the first 4 damage is the easiest. I always say the next 2 requires a little bit of effort, and the last 2 is the hardest. But with this deck, dealing the last 4 damage should be easier, and that's my main thing, or my latest thing I've been doing. like for a couple months now, I've been focusing on the idea of doing 4 damage. Even though the idea is to do 6 damage and then finish your opponent off by dealing the last 2 damage, I've been focusing on trying to do 4 damage in one shot type thing. So that's part of this deck strategy is you want to set it up where if your opponent plays one counter attack, especially if it's a sparking negate or a blocker negate, they literally will kill themselves because they're already losing 1 life for playing the card, and then because I have 3 cards in play that deal them 1 damage each for doing so, that's 4 damage all just for playing a sparking negate or a blocker negate. So this is just a way of you taking advantage of that. Another thing is that what's nice about this deck strategy is the fact that most decks already trying to self-awaken. Most players are already trying to take damage. Like a lot of times when I played against some decks, they tend to try to they have abilities where oh, I self-awaken and now I reduce my life to 5 or 6 or something like that. It's like, then you're already making it easy for me. I don't have to do much to get you down to like 4 or less life because you're already doing it for me. So I'm gonna take advantage of that, and this deck can definitely take advantage of that. Make it really hard for your opponent to negate because they'll take damage if they do. And remember, the whole point of negating, right, is so you don't take damage. Whoa, ain't that crazy? So this deck says, nope, negates hurt, death and taxes. And that's the end of the video.